I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines.
And I'm trying to be nice. I had to shut the other two videos off. I got my second jab today. Tomorrow my arm should hurt pretty bad. I'm waiting until I make a full video on that. But here's what's going on. Governor Lee in Tennessee, he made a big or-do out of saying parents will be responsible if their kids wear a mask or don't wear a mask. The doctors in Tennessee are up in arms saying, please wear a mask. Our governor says, it's not my right to tell parents what to do. They should know better. It's their kids. And I'm just sitting here shaking my head. So in Tennessee, I don't know about your state because we have a Republican governor here.
I signed it for those reasons, that our cases are at a low point. Everything has changed now. And yes, in hindsight, I wish that had not become law. But it is the law, and the only chance we have is either to amend it or for the courts to say that it has an unconstitutional foundation.
He's decided he's not doing nothing. Well, thank you, Governor Lee, for doing nothing. Because now we've got 2,106 kids have been reported in Tennessee. School-aged children. Your kids, your grandkids. Okay, this is the worst moment going, they're saying. It's also the worst day. What do you think tomorrow's going to be like? Over 1,000 that are 0 to 10 years old. New cases, one day. Why are you sitting there? They made it convenient. Walk into a Walmart. Walk anywhere. Go in. Get a shot. Walk out. It takes you less than 2 seconds. If anything, why don't you want to save your kids? And I've heard that 1,000 times. I would do anything for my kids. Prove it. Get off your ass and go get the damn jab. Catch you guys later.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? Thanks for clicking. Thanks for checking out the channel. Let's go ahead and try to do a VR to secret stuff. He put a video out there talking about what doo-doo heads people are that don't get the jab. Sum up his words. Parents should be able to make their own choices as to whether or not their children wear masks. Well, I mean, this is my core principle. This balls to bones. This is what I believe in. Heart and soul, more than anything. You makes your own choices and decisions, and you hope they work out for you. Okay? You get to pick. You have free will. You do what you think is the right thing to do and accept the consequences. Good or bad, doesn't matter. You pick. I agree with the governor. Okay, I agree with that. Especially parent rights, parental rights, huge. I'm huge into parental rights, okay? Huge. The number one thing about the cootie that scares me is that it's going to infringe on parental rights.
Oh, Dad on YouTube. He made a VR to me, and he disagrees with everything. He was actually quite emotional. I upset him because I said you should get the jab. He went all political. I did have a good giggle. Because everything in life should be your choice. Even if it's not a good choice. So let's start off with some basic common sense, shall we? I'm not going to go political. We had 3 doctors. They're all different with our family. All different doctors. And we went in and asked each one, do they suggest it? Why do they suggest it? And they gave us the reasons. Dad on YouTube. I look forward to more videos from you.
We did a great job on that. The ventilators, the equipment that we got, the cupboards were all bare, everything that we did. And then we developed a vaccine, 3 vaccines in 3 months, in 9 months. And actually, I'll tell you, it was 3 days less than 9 months. And it's great. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. You got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But you got, no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine. If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama and say, hey, you know what? But it is working.
Conservative radio talk show host Phil Valentine has died after a battle with COVID-19. Valentine had been hospitalized since July 22nd and was in very serious condition. We're told he was suffering from COVID pneumonia along with other side effects of the virus. Days later, he was placed on a ventilator. He hosted the Phil Valentine Show in Nashville.
December 14, 2020, a day many Canadians eagerly waited for when the first COVID-19 vaccines were administered. Fast forwarding to now, when about 73% of Canadians over 12 are fully vaccinated and the rest are not.
A lot of the time, those people who aren't doing it, it's because they've been exposed to misinformation.
An Angus Reid poll shows 75% of Canadians say they have no sympathy for unvaccinated people who get sick with COVID-19. The sentiment only rises with vaccinated Canadians at 83%. Assistant Professor of Behavioral Science Gordon Pennycook sees where people are coming from.
They're putting effort into trying to move things ahead in terms of like getting out of the pandemic. And I can see why it's frustrating that other people aren't doing it.
But he also says we should be empathetic because many unvaccinated Canadians may be genuinely scared.
It's more of a kind of leap of faith for them than it is for others. There still are people who just haven't seen the good arguments.
Pennycook says many vaccinated people are concerned that the pandemic will drag on longer than it needs to and will have more lockdowns, something many Canadians are frustrated by, leaving them with compassion fatigue. Many Canadians, including some healthcare workers, are low on empathy.
Here we have experts in the field who are giving us information that is very clear, very easy to understand, and yet there is a disconnect. But then we're also seeing it from those who are in the hospitals trying to save people's lives when those lives wouldn't have needed to be saved had those people likely been vaccinated.
But she says having patience is key to get through these challenging times with those who are unvaccinated and those going through compassion fatigue.
Being angry and being frustrated just makes our own lives harder and this whole situation that much more unbearable.
Just recovering from an exhausting year and a half on the front lines are being told they could be forced to work mandatory overtime and have their holidays canceled due to rising COVID-19 hospitalizations. Alberta Health Services telling the United Nurses of Alberta in an email Friday that emergency demand is high in the province, especially in the Edmonton and South Health zones. The email invokes emergency provisions of the contract, which allows the government to require overtime and cancel holidays. But the union says those provisions are only supposed to apply to unforeseen situations. And that the current spike in COVID-19 was anticipated by most public health experts, and the government should have better prepared for a fourth wave.
Hope you go to jail. Hey, great to see you guys. As a rule, politicians don't like hecklers, but when groups tried to shout down the Liberal leader for mandating vaccinations, it was a scrap he seemed happy to get into.
Across the country, they're stepping up to get vaccinated, to keep each other safe.
On the eve of the election call, Justin Trudeau declared vaccinations for federal civil servants mandatory, drawing a distinction with the Conservatives.
I will respect the personal health decisions of Canadians.
Aaron O'Toole is pro-vaccine but would not make them mandatory. Trudeau left no wiggle room. Absent a medical reason, vaccines are a must for civil servants, or else
there will be consequences.
Why come down so unequivocally on this issue? Perhaps because most voters have done so. An Ipsos survey found 80% of Canadians support mandatory vaccinations for federal public servants. And for teachers, it's 81%. And for healthcare workers, 84% of Canadians want vaccines to be mandatory. And among Liberal voters, all of these numbers are above 90%. Even 3/4 of Conservative voters support mandatory vaccinations. Most Canadians also support proof of vaccines for travel on trains and planes. And more than 2/3 back vaccine passports to enter restaurants, gyms, and other indoor venues.
There really is no debate. People think that vaccines should be ubiquitous, and they think that they should be directed and even mandatory.
There's growing urgency because the Delta variant is proving tenacious. After dipping below 400 COVID cases in mid-July, there are now more than 2,000 a day in this country. Not as many as in the third wave, but the fourth wave is building. It's hoped mandatory vaccines will keep this wave under control, though it means some will get vaccinated under duress, says this ethicist.
They will receive this and they will not
want it, and they'll be doing that to protect their livelihoods.
It should also protect the health of other Canadians.
The City of Toronto will implement a mandatory requirement for staff to be fully vaccinated.
More governments at all levels are opting for mandatory vaccines, and while opponents are vocal,
are you here to unmask our children?
There is broad public support for them.
Gracias a Dios y al trabajo de muchos, hoy tenemos vacunas para protegernos del COVID-19. Ellas traen esperanza para acabar la pandemia, pero solo si están disponibles para todos y si colaboramos unos con otros.
La terrible pandemia del coronavirus ha causado enfermedad, muerte y sufrimiento al mundo entero. Que Dios nos conceda la gracia de afrontarla con la fuerza de la fe, asegurando que las vacunas estén disponibles para todos, para que todos podamos vacunarnos.
Aún tenemos mucho por aprender sobre este virus, pero una cosa es segura, las vacunas autorizadas funcionan y están aquí para salvar vidas. Son clave para un camino de sanación personal y universal.
Vacunarse con vacunas autorizadas por las autoridades competentes es un acto de amor, y ayudar a que la mayoría de la gente lo haga es un acto de amor. Amor a uno mismo, amor a los familiares y amigos, amor a todos los pueblos. El amor es también social y político. Hay amor social y amor político. Es universal, siempre desbordante de pequeños gestos de caridad personal capaces de transformar y mejorar las sociedades. Vacunarse es un modo sencillo pero profundo de promover el bien común y de cuidarnos unos a otros, especialmente los más vulnerables. Le pido a Dios para que cada uno pueda aportar su pequeño grano de arena, su pequeño gesto de amor. Por más pequeño que sea, el amor siempre es grande. Aportar esos pequeños gestos para un futuro mejor. Que Dios lo bendiga y muchas gracias.
You're in a situation now where a lot of the folks who are not taking it, it's accessible to everyone, they have different reasons for why they don't take it, and I think that the more they're hectored by government officials or some of these folks, that is not going to get them to yes. I can tell you that right now. I think these are folks that have skepticism of authorities. I think they have different reasons why they may not do it. I don't think most of them think COVID is a hoax or anything. I think that they understand. Some of them are very young and healthy, and they're making the calculation that they'll likely be able to handle it, and I understand that too. But as you're trying to reach some of these folks, I think it's important to just be honest with them about the risks of COVID. If they are in a less risky category, you should just be honest with that and not try to scare people into taking it, which a lot of these authorities have done. They see that, and I think that they're very keen on that. So what my view has always been is these vaccines, and you can look at the EUAs, there are occasionally some side effects. But if you're 70 years old, man, the benefit is so much better than worrying about some of that. It's not even close. You know, as you get talking about young kids, parents going to look at that and maybe make a little bit different calculation, and that is fine, but just understand where we're at, understand the benefits, particularly folks who may have health conditions or who are a little older. And I can tell you the data has been very strong. If the data wasn't strong, then we would have to acknowledge that to people, and I would be the first to want to do it. But the data has been really strong. When you have these upticks, it's affecting, for things beyond cases, it's affecting in a clinical way people almost entirely who are unvaccinated. I also am not, I've never been driven by the case counts, because you have people who may test positive now, we know, who are vaccinated. And so they'll be positive, but they're almost entirely not going to get a serious illness. And so to me, it's about preventing the illness, not a positive test.
2 x-rays, one big difference. The images one doctor says prove why getting the vaccine is so important, especially as COVID cases continue to rise in our area.
Lee, on one side, we see the lungs of a person who was vaccinated. On the other, someone who didn't get the vaccine.
Both have COVID, but their lungs look very different.
Putting these x-rays side by side, you can see a distinction.
So these are what unvaccinated COVID-19 lungs look like. If you see all the white here, that's the virus taking over. And if we take a look over here, this is what vaccinated COVID-19 lungs look like. All of that black means that the lungs are filled with air, and that's what lungs should look like.
321 new cases today. Health officials have said that cases would climb our positivity rate down day over day by more than 0.5% to 1.7. Health Minister Christine Elliott says of today's cases, 267 of those are in people who are not vaccinated. That works out to 83%. Dr. Andrew Bazari with the University Health Network telling City News, while raising case counts are cause for concern, our high vaccination rate is encouraging. 82% of those 12 and older in Ontario have had at least one shot of a vaccine, while more than 72% are fully vaccinated.
This has been a Hungry Cherry production 2021.